Good morning, Mid-Atlantic region. I am the cleanup hitter. Now, Lily doesn't know what that means, but you know. Well, Lily depressed you, as Paula said, and she gave you the reason why you had no choice and you did not have the luxury of sitting on the sidelines. Dennis talked about his passion for this work and why he wasn't going to let idiots, I believe that's the term he used. Actually, I think Lily used that term too. Why he wasn't going to let the idiots win, that it would take a strong defense and offense, taking responsibility to fight for the why we went into education, taking responsibility to fight for what is right. They were both talking to fellow leaders. That would be you. Leadership guru Daniel Goleman suggests that leaders must possess an understanding of the need to honor the past, manage the limitations of their current reality, and then be able to transcend both, to position an organization or a movement for the possibilities that await in the future. I could not agree more. At such a pivotal time in our organization's history, we must know and we must understand. And finally, we must embrace our yesterday and our today, hard as that is, as well as our tomorrow. My dad was a history teacher. He passed away last year after a long illness, and at his funeral, two of his former students came up to me and talked to me about the impact that my father's love of history and his understanding of its importance had on them and their view of the world. I too learned that from my dad. So throughout this challenging year, I read and then I reread the history of the NEA. Dennis commented that it was quite appropriate that we kicked off our regional leadership conference season this year in the Midwest, the epicenter of the transformation of the NEA and the heart of the attacks to roll back all that we have gained. But in reality, there were little campfires throughout this nation, from Florida to New Hampshire, from Maine to California, from New York to, of course, Wisconsin. Teachers decided they were going to take control of their profession. When they reached that tipping point of frustration and that critical mass of determination, they organized and changed the course of this union. Our former executive director, Don Cameron, described in his book, The Inside Story of the Teacher Revolution in America, that NEA changed in the blink of an eye from a tea and crumpets association to a union of teachers that embraced collective bargaining and more adversarial forms of collective action to improve the stature not just of teachers, but of all education employees. We changed from a group of practical teachers, that's what we were called, to a force of activists who ultimately included our ESP, all fighting for their right to participate in the political process. From a polite association to one, as Al Tony Gilmore chronicles in his book, All the People, NEA's steadfast commitment to realizing true social justice. In the 1960s, we began to chafe against low wages and lack of job security and the paternalistic control exercised by superintendents and school boards. One by one, our affiliates began to seek strategies to gain power and influence. Unionization, previously unthinkable alternatives, suddenly seemed to be the most expeditious avenue to gain a higher measure of parity. As the drumbeat for collective action increased, the NEA found itself sorely lacking in the skills and resources its members were now demanding. Something that would actually drastically begin to change as the priorities of the NEA transition to meet the needs of its members. Our current reality isn't that much different from what our leaders faced some 50 years ago. Their challenges actually became opportunities to transform the NEA, and we emerged stronger than ever because of the members and leaders who were willing to put their jobs and their freedom, oftentimes their safety, on the line. So here we are. We're still the largest labor union in this country. But we're at a precipice, again, struggling to soar and gain control of our professional lives, or fall into the crevasse against a backdrop of an economic crisis that has impacted our organization like no other time in our history. So, the limitations of our current reality, just how do we manage that? The impact that the recession has had on education funding will, by all accounts, every analysis indicates that it will stretch for years to come. Our ability to ensure quality education for every student will be significantly diminished if our power wanes. So here's the stark reality. Since the 2008-2009 fiscal year, our record high for membership, 3,234,639 members, that was our record high. We've lost over 160,000 members. That's a lot. And we are bracing ourselves, for those who attended the budget hearing, we are bracing ourselves in this next coming year for over 100,000 more. Woe is right. We are a membership organization. 99% of our revenue comes from our membership. So let's try to grasp the impact of those numbers. We find ourselves for the second year in a row in a position where we will have to rebalance our budget after the Representative Assembly passed a balanced budget not 6 months ago. That rebalancing will be to the tune of $10 million we have to find in our budget this year. And as we begin to build for the 12-14 budget, the additional money that we will have to find will grow exponentially. Last year, we had to find $17.5 million. That's what we took to the Representative Assembly. As our membership numbers slipped from month to month, we struggled to make the necessary modifications to present that balanced budget to the Representative Assembly, but here we are again. That's a total of $27 million in less than a year and a half. Given the progression of the impact of recessions, going from national to state to local, we know we have not yet reached the bottom. As we anticipate state and local funding for education dropping to new lows, it's possible that we might see more examples of what happened in our schools in the Chester Upland District of Pennsylvania. That's a community that has the highest student poverty rates in the Commonwealth. Our governor, like so many of the wealth warriors that Lilly exposed, is more concerned with protecting special interests than his billionaire buddies than he is about protecting our children and their education. So after he slashed education funding, the district reached out to him and asked for help to meet their payroll. And he said no. No. But our remarkable members, both our teachers and ESP, are standing up for their students in the face of adversity. The members of the Chester Upland Education Association and the Education Support Professional Association each adopted resolutions pledging to work without pay for as long as they were able. These educators came together and reminded the country of what we already know. Students and their education are our priority when we walk into our schools and work sites every day. Now, though the spotlight of shame that PSEA, our state affiliate, and NEA helped to shine on this tragedy has forced our governor to blink, he is only providing enough funds to make payroll through February, when our teachers and ESP members will once again face not being paid. This selfless devotion of our members in Chester Upland, what they are showing is truly heroic. But heroism for someone else's kids should not come at the expense of your own. This heartbreaking story and so many others are why we must manage our current reality so we can remain a strong advocate for our members. At a time when our very existence is being threatened and those threats are spreading across this nation like brush fires, we have to be even stronger. We have to be more powerful. Sure, we've had some wins, the greatest in OH, where we regained our collective bargaining rights when the workers stood up and said, "What, Gretchen?" "Hell no." That's what I thought. Hell no. But we also had other successes in Missouri and Iowa, in Iowa. Is that the 51st state? Hawaii, and Oklahoma, and many other states where we fought back attacks on our ability to participate in the political process, have a decent pension, affordable health care. We've beaten back voucher proponents and so-called reformers. We've had some successes. But the losses have been devastating. You have but to ask Alabama or Michigan, Tennessee or Arizona, or just turn and ask North Carolina. And probably most troubling is the reality that our enemies have now regrouped. They've learned from our successes, and they are making course corrections even as we are sitting and learning together this weekend. They are combining forces and they are coming back to hit us hard again. This year, we had 25 states that passed legislation affecting public school employees' pensions. And next year, we anticipate 29. This year, we had 18 states' collective bargaining rights threatened. Next year, we are bracing for far more. 16 of our states will face dues collection or paycheck deception challenges, and 24 have or will file legislation to make some form of vouchers into law. From union certification to agency fee, from contracting out education services to right-to-work legislation, the threats were unending this year, and they will proliferate in 2012. And that well-orchestrated plan that is hugely financed, the one that Lily talked about, described, that plan to expand their attacks to the federal level makes our need to ensure that our goalie in President Obama becomes our imperative. You know, I have to agree with Paula. It is absolutely hilarious to me that Lily was making all these sports analogies. She really didn't know what she was talking about. She didn't. She didn't have a clue. So our need for the defense of our affiliates is clear, and it has the potential, and I want you to listen to this, it really does, it has the potential to overwhelm our resources, all of them. Our money, huge resource. Our time, a bigger resource. But the biggest resource it has the power to overwhelm ourselves. We can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. We can't allow our detractors or even our friends, to force us into a defensive place where we lose sight of who we are and why we exist. So to manage our current reality, we are focused like a laser on two strategic goals. Number one, the most important, is to fend off the attacks on our affiliates. If we don't survive, we cannot fight for public education and our members. We must first survive. Goal number one. And then goal number two, even with all that's swirling around us, we can't stop moving closer to that vision of great public schools for not one but every student. So we've got to unite not just our members, but this entire nation to fulfill the promise of public education. We've got to do that. And our top priority has got to be our schools and our students who have the greatest needs. Our priority schools. Those are our two strategic goals. And you know, when football isn't dead to me, I can use those analogies too. Former coach John Madden actually coined this phrase, yards after contact. He was talking about the number of yards a running back was able to continue to gain even after he was hit by his opponents. Well, we've been hit. We've been hit hard, and guess what? The rest of the defense is running at us now, trying to tackle us. Will we let them? Oh no, we're gonna have some serious yards after contact. So we have this rich past, and we have a challenging current reality. Just how do we transcend them to create those opportunities, not just for our organization, but quite honestly, I believe that we are being called to lead a movement. So how do we do that? Well, Dennis challenged you on Friday. Paula talked about the story about the minister, and he challenged you to actually take your money out your pocket. Take it out. Take that power out and use it. We will fight to preserve our union. We understand that we, the union of education professionals, are the ones who can and must ensure that public education lives up to its intended purpose. And to do that, we must lead. We must lead the change that is now required. You know, history has taught us that education will change. It will change when society changes. In the late 19th century, the United States restructured education to meet the needs of an urbanizing and industrializing society. And NEA was actually at the forefront of many of those changes, from making secondary education compulsory, to fighting for federal legislation, to provide resources to help to try to close those persistent opportunity and access gaps for our students of color and those who are living in poverty, to also ensuring that our students with disabilities had access to a quality education. We were leading that. Now, during this, the morning of the 21st century, we must again restructure public education to meet the needs of a new society that is organized around knowledge. And NEA must again take its rightful place, leading. America's public schools are being asked to do something we really, quite frankly, were not built to do, and we weren't asked to do in the past. We are being asked to educate the great majority of students to very high academic standards and to prepare them for a world in which thinking for a living is the norm, and it's no longer the exception. In their book, Taking Charge of Quality, the authors argue that education employees and their unions should lead in these changes, take charge of improving and preparing our students for a future that they don't yet know. They believe that this pressure actually creates an opportunity for us, for both teachers and other educators and their unions. And guess what? We agree. It is an opportunity for us. But we have to begin now. We have to be determined that our profession and the institution of public education will become what we, the practitioners, envision it must and should become. Because no one is more qualified than us. We have to take charge. Last fall, Dennis articulated a vision of the NEA as the national leader in public education policy and practice, and he created the NEA Joint Committee on Leading the Professions to give the organization direction and momentum towards realizing this vision. The committee is actually made up of more than 24 state, national, and local leaders and executive staff from NEA and other state and local affiliates. Rhonda Johnson, is she still in the room? Rhonda is part of that committee. She's doing incredible work with us. The charges of the committee are to give definition to the concept. Because, you know, it's nice to throw that out there. Dennis has been doing it for a year or so. But what does that really mean? And so that's what we're looking at. We want to, or we're charged with proposing how the national, state, and local affiliates can actually collaborate and mutually be supportive of each other and do something we've actually never done before, which is to leverage our collective resources together to actually achieve this bold new vision. Well, the committee has begun its work, and we're learning from and we're challenging each other. We're engaging in very, very, very spirited debates, and we're wrestling with questions like, what would it look like for our association to lead the way? How will our work actually change? How would we resource or provide resources to different parts of our association? How we allocate them? How can we create or change behaviors to make this all happen? Well, on our first day, we did what's called a gallery walk, where we shared what was happening at the local and state levels, examples that our leaders could give us of how they were leading the profession. Not only did we learn that a lot of amazing work was going on, but we learned how much we didn't know. We have got to figure out how we connect all of these dots from all the work that all of us are doing or imagining, so we can actually see ourselves as leaders, and everyone else can too. We are due to provide a report in March, and then Dennis will ask the board and state and local leaders and others to consider what actions we must take as an organization to engage in positioning ourselves to lead. Every one of our 6 regional conferences planned a workshop, seminar, strand to address this particular topic. And I will tell you that the conversations that you had, the insights and ideas that you share will be shared with the committee. But you can't stop there. You have to take these conversations back to your locals to make sure that they are engaging in them as well. You know, our success lies in our ability to engage our members, challenging their thinking, broadening their views, learning from each other, getting their best thinking of education professionals on how we can lead in transforming America's public schools to meet the changing needs of a very diverse, global, and interdependent society. We must find our way beyond being disregarded as professionals by those who know little, if anything, about teaching and learning, to a place where we are the deciders. We make the decisions. We are in a place of influence and power. And we can't just fight back. We must embrace our responsibility as educators to not only guide and control what's going on today, but we've got to lay the foundation for a future that we actually can't even really imagine. It is the perfect storm. A rare combination of circumstances that will aggravate a situation drastically. Aggravate. I am aggravated. How about you, Mid-Atlantic region? Are you aggravated? I am aggravated by the societal pressures and global comparisons, the economic downturn that has stripped our schools of the resources they need, aggravates me. Everyone telling us how to do our jobs, others defining us and public education and our profession has aggravated us. Have you been aggravated? Yeah, our situation is aggravated, but so are we. I don't know about you. I don't know about you. But that aggravation motivates me every day to work toward creating an event of unusual magnitude. Listen to me. An event of unusual magnitude, a perfect storm where NEA is living into its mission, actually uniting us all of us, to create those great public schools, a perfect storm where the NEA is transforming itself to transform this nation. As we end this week of celebration and remembrance of one of America's most significant heroes, Dr. Martin Luther King, let me leave you with one of his most compelling warnings. If we do not act, we will surely be dragged down those long, dark, and shameful corridors of time that are reserved for those who possess power without compassion, might without morality, and strength without sight. We must act. We have no choice. Now, I know that I'm asking a lot of you, and so I will leave you this morning with 3 words that I've shared with you before. But they mean more this year than they ever have for our organization before. Keep plugging away. Those are the words, as you recall, from a poem I had to learn and recite when I was a small child growing up in a little Black Baptist church in North Philly. You see, it was the church's tradition that the children would always say pieces, always with the pieces, Easter pieces and Christmas pieces. Can I get a witness this Sunday morning? I knew I could. Well, come from a large family. My father had 8 sisters and 4 brothers, 12 in all. Every one of those 8 sisters thought they were my mother. Every time they walked into our house, they said, "Becky Sue, get up on that landing and say your piece." By the time the day came for me to say my piece, I was sick of it. They called me up to the front of the church, and much to the congregation's surprise and my family's horror, my knees began to buckle, and I bolted from the church. I know. Well, Mid-Atlantic region, my father came out after me. Now, I have to tell you, that's right. I have to tell you, when I saw him, I was more than a little bit afraid. He's from that spare the rod, spoil the child generation. Do you know what I mean? But noticing my obvious dejection, he put his arms around me and he said, "Rebecca." That's what he called me when he was really mad or very serious. He said, "Rebecca, look up at that sky. The sun is still shining, and it will rise again tomorrow." With those encouraging words, I went back into that church, and I said my piece, the beginning words of which I remember to this day. When rising storms to quell, when opposing waters swell, you keep plugging away. If the hills are hard to climb and the paths are long before, you keep plugging away. Mid-Atlantic region, those are my words to you today. When pundits and pontificators and idiots try to blame you for all of the society's ills, you keep plugging away. When those misguided politicians try to strip your rights and devalue your worth, you keep plugging away. Do you hear me? You don't give up. You keep plugging away. When you think you can't attend one more rally or engage one more member, when you're too tired to stand up and speak out, you jump and you shout and you keep plugging away. Do you hear me this morning? You don't give